find out about the authenticity of I will point you to this wonderful paper that has been written and put together by the Venerables Sujata and Venerables or Ajams Ramani that has been approved by the Secretary of Police Service, which is headed by Emergency Observatory Congress. Please go there and see that paper because that's very far, very important. We are now in the midst of disruptive governance, foreign policy, and education tariffs. Against this background, this declaration of symptoms is not really mindless, but rather the teachings of the Buddha. And so it knows Sutra, or Sutra means bread. This meaning conveys the idea that Sutra weaves together teachings like a thread that holds fabric together. So Sutra, Latin Sutura, refers to the process of sewing moves together in immensity. So my task is really very simple. It is to thread some of the themes of the Buddha on stability and close relevance for the world today. So, Dhamma diplomacy and the modern environment. A bit of modern history. I wanted to know the third Secretary of the United Nations, two parts. How is it possible for one individual to change circumstances relating to an existential global threat? We go to the experiences of the third Secretary General, a Buddhist. He was from Myanmar, and he was involved with the United Nations from 1961 to 1971. And he succeeded particularly in international politics. One, saved this from a nuclear missile crisis. Two, he launched the World Environment Movement. So, according to an article at that time, and you can Google this and find it on the net, there is an article that writes about his practice. And it goes like this. Each morning after rising at 6:30, Bhutan of Burma, Secretary of the United Nations, performs the Buddhist rites. He sits quite alone and meditates, tries to attain what he was humbly, emotionally approved. Just a year to his visit was the most friendly threat to Bhutan, which came from the human. Suddenly, the world was placed on the edge of a nuclear war. Hostilities broke out between the US and the USSR. There were arms blockades at the time around Cuba. And President Kennedy at the time requested Bhutan to intervene, and he did. And so Bhutan, right between President Kennedy, Soviet Union leader the Khrushchev and the Cuban leader Fidel Castro. And Buddha found, after painstaking diplomacy, we found what we all know as being the middle way between these strong personalities. Finding the middle way has been one of the processes, the techniques that I have used in bringing hostile nations together in my work. And what is this middle way? This middle way is in the Samhita, because 12:15, big discourses 12:15, and this is an adds the critical and crucial statement of the Buddha for 2025 and the future. And this happened, and I'm not going into it in detail because time is short, but I will crystallize what happened. Venerable Mahatma was involved with this discussion and debate concerning duality and non-duality. So he came in front of the Buddha and said, Sammaditi, Sammaditi Bhante, Sammaditi Uchati. They are saying, rightly. Then he asked the Buddha, and what is all this about right view? And so then the Buddha went into one of the most political, logical explanations on the whole area of duality and non-duality, which scientists are talking about now, which he talked about 2,500 years ago. That is something which we need to remember. And then he said, Sabbamati, all exists. That's one view. Sabbamna, all does not exist. That's the second proposition. But this is the one of the line. The Tathagata speaks, the realized one speaks by the middle way. And this is an extremely profound teaching for the diplomatic community, for the world at large. This is even applicable for families and also maybe for resolving disputes between religions in terms of finding the middle way. Ugoante antagama majena patagato Dhamma basic. Avoiding these two extremes, the realized one teaches by the middle. And then we turn from there to what Utan did with the environment. The late 1960s was a time when environmental protests were going around all over. So what he did was to respond to them, and he called for the first United Nations Conference on the Human Environment, which took place in Stockholm in 1972, which gave rise to the creation of the United Nations Environment Program and all the subsequent activities since then. So, in order to understand what is sustainable development and how the Buddha Dhamma is applicable to this process, let's have a look at the definition of sustainable development, which we came up with, and I was having a inside seat when this definition started to shape. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without jeopardizing the ability of future generations to meet theirs. Now, you might find that this is also being quoted by World Bank representatives, IMF representatives, and I've seen them quote these references in recent times when they visit Sri Lanka. I just want to point out that these concepts of sustainability and sustainable development, they drop down from the moon. And I am extremely concerned about some of the responses to representatives of IMF and the World Bank, because of the fact that when you go into the sustainable development goals, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but I want to go into the ecological framework of the Buddha. The Buddha talked about the interdependence of phenomena a very long time. A very, very long time ago. So I'm now going back again to point to you the sustainable development goals that we are all in after the millennium goals. We are not going to meet these goals, to be sure, because of all that is going around us, all the noise that is going around us. But it is good to be able to know what is going on. So the sustainable development goals were adopted in 2012 at the Rio Summit. And then it was rubber stamped in 2015. So let's take a look at these goals and see how the Buddha Dhamma applies to these goals. The relationship between people, environment, and the cosmos, which is the ecological framework of the Buddha. And this framework, to my mind, is succinctly summarized in this very interesting explanation of what Paticcasamuppada means by Venerable Assaji, the one who was influential in Sariputta's transformation. Yedhamma eti prabhava kesam vidam patalato aha kesanchayo nirodo eramvadi mahasangam. Whatever phenomena arises from a cause, the Buddha has explained their cause, also their cessation, thus speaks with grace as it. So when you apply dependent origination to the environment, it signifies that all elements within an ecosystem are interconnected and influence each other, meaning that a change in one part of the environment will inevitably impact other parts, creating a web of cause and effect where nothing exists independently. And more than 2,500 years ago, you find this remarkable statement by the Buddha. In the Anguttara and 3.7, in this sutta are these lines. Vigaratam Dayastai. Can you imagine this? 2,500 years ago. Vigaratam Dayastai. Lasting welfare and happiness. And I am rather surprised that these kinds of sutras are not discussed much in this world today. That for me is very surprising. And then this is the ecological framework of the Buddha. And he says this, and he was very, very straight with the rulers of his time. He did not hold back. He says, at a time when the kings are unprincipled, royal officials become unprincipled, royal officials, Brahmins and householders become unprincipled, when the Brahmins and householders are unprincipled, the people of town and country become unprincipled, the people of town and country are unprincipled, the courses of the moon and the sun become erratic, the courses of the stars and constellations, the days and nights, the months, the seasons, climate change, become erratic, blowing the winds become erratic and chaotic, the heating the heaven, the heavens don't provide enough rain, but the crops ripen erratically, when people crops that are ripened erratically, they become short-lived, ugly, weak, and sickly. It is often in environmental issues, then and now, that the disadvantaged suffer the most, largely women children in the world. And so, in the same Sutta, the Buddha goes on to the alternative, is that when the kings are principled and the royal officials are principled, then we find the positive solutions flowing down and then changing the lives of all individuals for the better. I don't go into detail because you can have a look at this also on the net. So the Buddha, then why are there disputes? And this I can learn now, particularly with what is going on in the world. Why are there disputes? A question was put to the Buddha. Why, when beings all wish to live in peace, why are spirituality and world in conflict? Was the question that was conveyed. This was the discourse during this time, getting that. And the Buddha said, it is the bonds of envy and mercenariness that bind beings so that although they wish to live without hate, hostility, or enmity, and to live in peace, yet they live in hate, harming one another, hostile as enemies. This is applicable to what is going on in the Ukraine. This is applicable to other areas of conflict in the world. Here you have the causes. And the Buddha also dealt with ignorance, willful ignorance, as I call it. The Buddha identified ignorance, avijja, as a fundamental cause of suffering. And he goes on further to say that ignorance is a condition for choices, a conditioning for choices. That you are conditioned also when you're young and the media, through the media as well now, you are conditioned to be suspicious of the other. You are conditioned, despite the fact that people may have done many things, you are conditioned, although we may have suffered from climate change, the world around, there is clear evidence that climate change is impacting people at the world. You are conditioned to think that climate change is not nothing to do with that. Climate change is a hoax. That is the conditioning that exists in the world today. And the Buddha said this 2,500 years ago. This whole process of conditioning. And then he says, an ignorant person sunk in their ignorance gives rise to wrong views. An ignorant person, he didn't hold back. An ignorant person sunk in ignorance gives rise to wrong view. And he then presented the other side. Knowledge precedes the attainment of spiritual qualities, with conscience and prudence following along. Knowledge precedes the attainment of spiritual qualities, with conscience and prudence following along. And so we go to Sustainable Development Goals 16 on peace and justice. And the last publication in 2020 of the Environmental Justice Atlas puts the conflicts concerning environment in the world to be something like 3,100. Now, what did the Buddha do about environmental conflicts? I'd like to pose the question. And here it is, and here's what it did. And this concern, I don't know whether you are aware of this, but this is about the Rohini River conflict. The river between the Sakyans and the Koreans, in what is now called Lumi, this river is there now. And so the Sakyans and the Koreans shared this river. They were part of a common plan. Their occupation was agriculture. There was an increase in population. The water resources were not adequate for their needs. There was a clash. There were clashes concerning the use of the water resources. And then finally, the situation erupted, and there were both armies ready, the Sakyans on one side, and the Koreans on the other side, ready to go to war. The Buddha heard about this, and he didn't hesitate. There was no hesitation. He went right into the middle of this conflict. They saw him, and they decided to calm down, lay down their arms. And so, what the Buddha said was that the blood that you spill is more important than the water that is available. So it is important that you come together and resolve this, and they did. And that's how the Buddha solved this issue of what we call in the environmental world scarce natural resources. Can you imagine what this approach would be if it was applicable to the conflicts that are around the world today at the moment? These are the armies on either side of the Rohini River. And this is what I have gone on to describe. And war was averted at that time. Then comes sustainable consumption, because you always hear about this all the time about recycling. And I just want to point out that if you want to know about sustainable consumption, have a chat with one of the members of the summit. It will tell you how to live with what is needed and necessary. That is part and parcel of the linear sustainable consumption. But I want to just bring your attention to just one very interesting bit of information, where there is the statement about the fact that nothing is wasted. So King Dana asked Ananda, the Buddha's redoubtable assistant, what will you do with all these roads that you see? So this is the summary of a very big Silva and Ananda's response, which Professor Silva has summarized and put together. When new roads are received, old roads are used as covenants, old covers as mattresses, old mattresses, mattress covers as rugs, old rugs as dusters, old tattered dusters are needed with clay and boots to repair cracked floors and walls. So that was Ananda's response to people then. And what happened after that, they gave more roads following that design. The whole area of reduced qualities is sustainable development there. The kind I have now crystallized and summarized the kinds of abuse that the Buddha received during the course of his time. And he was a person who met with some tough situations. He was called a shameless, word that was used right through, and I think we find this in the Mahavimana Sutta. Lola, Vasana, lacks for, worthless ascetic. These were said when he was around going about overseas, asking Kadana. Despicable outcast, Vaslaka. And this was what was told to him by a 16-year-old Brahmin student called Ambata. He called the Sakyans Imba, primitives. That was the term that is used in the literature. So, in one of these instances, the Buddha, of course, never ended that. He also responded. And he described what is really meant by a person concerning low life. You are not a low life by birth, nor by birth are you a Brahmin. You are a low life by your deeds. By deeds, you are a Brahmin. This is the shattering stuff concerning race, caste, and creed, which the Buddha taught broke during his time, on how we treat each other in our societies. Zero harm. The Buddha also was very concerned about the plight of the poor. And he told one of the leaders, let not injustice prevail in your realm. Those who are poor in your kingdom, you should provide them with wealth. That is the moral obligation concerning the Dhamma. Corruption is another area which he was very tough on. And he talked about the fact that the sentient beings who refrain from bribery, fraud, cheating, and duplicity are few, whereas those who refrain are many. Ukotana Vajanam Nikati Sachi Yoga. The Buddha likened corruption to an art form, a yoga. If you break this compounded term down, Ukotana Vajanam Nikati Sachi Yoga. The art of bribery, fraud, cheating, and duplicity. That's how we put it. And this is one where, in the case of, for instance, dealing with justice and jurisprudence, sometimes those who were accused were brought before him and asked to explain. Some were let off, some were then also asked to show cause and to make recompense. But this is something that is different that I found. And this is in the Kosata Sutta 8:20. And the Buddha was to speak, he was very silent. He didn't speak for a long time. And then Ananda went and asked him, "Sir, they are waiting for your discourse." And then the Buddha said, "Ananda, the, the community is not here." So Mahamangalananda, the venerable, who was seated nearby, who had this psychic prowess, wondered as to who was speaking out. And then he went up, and then he saw this individual. He went up to this individual and said, "Get up, brethren, the Buddha has seen you. You can't live in communion with the many years." He asked him thrice, but then he said, he didn't leave. So what did Mahamangalananda do? He took the person by the arm, ejected him out of the gate, and bolted the door, went up to the Buddha and said, "I have ejected that person." Nikamika, eject. So Bhante, Guru Maya. Because of physical death. And then the Buddha acknowledged the verses. He said, "It is incredible, Mangalananda, it is amazing how that foolish man waited to be taken by the arm. That was one way of dealing with corruption at his time. Gender equality. And this is another area which in the Buddha Dhamma is half-breaking from the path of the Buddha and the Bhikkhuni Sangha at his time. The establishment of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, you know all that, was a revolutionary act realized to the history of Mahatma Gandhi and hundreds of determined women. And this is an event and an establishment that is unsurpassed and unparalleled in world history. Unparalleled in world history. And then we come to the Middle Discourse of 44, where the Buddha, you remember the sutta where two suttas, where he highlighted the 10 most the bhikkhus who excel in various areas, the 10 bhikkhunis who excel in various areas, and I'm just going to focus on one, that's Dhamma. And he said, Dhamma's former husband came to him, taking her, and questioned her vigorously about the Dhamma, and she responded. Then, that was Visakha, his name. He went and related the entire responses of Dhamma to the Buddha. And the Buddha responded and said, "If you came to me and asked this question, I would answer it exactly the same way as non-Dhamma. That is what it means, and that is how you should remember it. If you came to me and asked this question, I would answer it exactly the same way as non-Dhamma. That's what it means, and that's how you should remember it." And he said about Dhamma, Pandita Visa, Dhamma Bhikkhuni, Mahapanna Visa, Dhamma Bhikkhuni. The nun Dhamma is a scholar, Visa. She has great wisdom, heart-breaking statements, unparalleled in human history. Then the Buddha was also very tough on the trafficking of women and girls, which was a very favorite pastime amongst the rich, the rulers, and the aristocrats of his time. And he said this, that as long as the Vajis are referring to the leadership of the Vaji community, as long as the Vajis don't forcibly abduct the women or girls of the parents and make them live with them, they can expect growth and not decline. And on many occasions, he said, they avoid receiving women and girls. And then he also talked about not receiving male and female bond servants. And there are at least 12 symptoms dealing with this trafficking of women and girls. 12 symptoms. And I am rather surprised that these symptoms are not that very much discussed in the story. And I wonder why. Then comes Dhammic diplomacy. And the time of Emperor Asoka. And this is concerning forgiveness. Emperor Asoka, after his brutal war with the Kalingars, where he put down the Kalingars and defeated them, but the slaughter was incredible. And this is in roughly 13, where he talks about repentance. This is due to repentance of the beloved of the gods, that's Samrat Asoka, on having conquered the country of the Kalingars, bearing the slaughter, death, and deportation of men which take place in the course of the conquest of an unconquered country, now considered extremely painful and deplorable by the beloved of the gods. And you imagine a ruler now in this modern day age, seeking repentance and forgiveness and speaking about it in public, and this is a statement that is hard in box. That is a very verse to names. And so, going speedily, I have put together from all the documents of Emperor Asoka, I have put together some points where we dealt with concerning sustainable development. Death penalty was abolished, welfare of animals became a state concern, medical facilities for both people and animals. Officers were appointed to work for the welfare and happiness of the poor and the aged. Generosity towards monks and ascetics, and frugality in spending. These are some of the principles that were expounded by the great Emperor Asoka. And here are his missions abroad to many different parts of the world, and of course, including Sri Lanka, where we have Arahat Mahinda. These are all, I just want to tell you that these are all artificial intelligence images that you can now guess. I dabble a lot in AI and artificial intelligence. I personally think that artificial intelligence, the Buddha Dhamma, will thrive through artificial intelligence in the future, and the Dhamma is made for artificial intelligence. So I have now recreated a scene where Arahat Mahinda is speaking, and you have Sumanapera, who is seated behind him, and large numbers in this very wonderful park in front of him. And in this park, you have largely according to the Vivamasa, Majority of those who came to see him were women and boys. And the discussions went late into the night. So, in this situation, excuse me, having heard about my Amula Devi, Amula Devi, Amula, sister-in-law of them is became committed to the Buddha. So she went to her brother-in-law in Devanapurisa, and by the way, this was not saying that I have permission to join the Bhikkhuni order. This was, I think, when I read this was like an order. This is in your age. She said, we would like to join the Bhikkhuni order. Can you make it so? That was it. Nothing about maybe have no permission or anything of that kind. So the in Devanapurisa, this is them coming and asking for the request to join the order. He sent Prince Arita, and this is something that is not necessarily written on anywhere. Prince Arita was the chef de cabinet, the chief, the prime minister, and his time. It fell upon him to go and see the Emperor Asoka and ask that somebody came to Sri Lanka. This is a remarkable example of Dhamma rules. I just want, and this is my recreation of it in front of Emperor Asoka. But this is an interesting thing in the Mahavamsa, this particular set of prayers. I personally think that reading this at the beginning, Emperor Asoka was a bit reluctant to say also his daughter to Islam. And he was concerned, I think, about his succession. But I think Prince Arita did something really interesting. He switched tracks, as we say in the diplomatic world. And he went and approached Samvita directly. And Samvita took matters to her own hands. Listen to this from the daughter of the greatest emperor of the time. She had the world at her feet, but she was a bhikkhuni then. Hearing the statement of her father, the elder nun, Samvita said to the king, her brother's words has importance for me, together with the request from the great queen and thousands of women. Further, I suppose this is not just my brother's word, and there are many waiting for the going forth, which I desire to take great care. And so now I must go. This was not a request. May I go? I must go. So then the emperor replied, if you decide to go, take a branch of the supreme Bodhi tree and go, noble sister, you must see your brother in London. And so Samvita Devi arrived in the 19th regnal year in Sri Lanka. This was one of the most remarkable events in world history. There is nothing that is parallel to this initiative of a woman spiritual leader, in this case, a woman Dhamma leader, going from one state to another state to share spiritual values and teachings. It is the best of Dhammic diplomacy that is there for us in the world. And she took along 11 others, and so here they are, the 12. Uttara, Vikachana, Evam, Saratala, Advika Dasa, Pedu, Havata, Matta, Malla, Bhamalasya. And this is in Dhamma, Bhagavan's chapter 80. I am concerned about looking at some of your faces, you seem to be a little bit astonished, but these are all written down. And so please research these facts and figures and use them in instances where you are, because this is absolutely shattering. The glass ceilings we are talking about were shattered then 240 BCE in Sri Lanka. So we don't need lectures from anywhere else about feminism or gender equality or sustainable development or whatever. This is in our culture, this is in our tradition. And this is the ordination of the first Buddhist nun outside of India. The establishment of the first international Buddhist order was through the ordination of Manouri, and now we find that there is a sepia which has been found, it is in the process of being excavated in Anuradhapura, and this is one of the inscriptions found where you have evidence without any doubt or uncertainty, and where it talks about the Anuradhapura, that is the royal monastery of Anuradhapura, and identifies the secret. So there is the international impact of some literary and heritage. The Diplomat says, who are these people who came to Sri Lanka? They were pundits there, 12 women who sacrificed, paid at that time from Jammu to Kandapans to an unknown nation to spread the Dhamma. And they were pundits, they were pundits and scholars. The Vivamsa chronicles their song. They taught the women in Anuradhapura. They also taught the 5 connections of the Sutta and the 7 trees of the Anantara. These are the written leaders in the history of our nation. So let's take a look at the facts now. I mean, for instance, imagine yourself earlier on, there was a statement that you may be having CEOs or those from the management of companies. Let's take a look at the facts in terms of their impacts. So, Sanavida Devi arrived in Sri Lanka around 245 BCE. And this is in the Dhamma. By the Sri Lankan king Katakana's brain and his son, there were 16,000 big leaders in Sri Lanka. 16,000. Any CEO of any company would be satisfied with these statistics in an impact assessment. Approximately 220 years. So we come last fall to another pioneering effort, this time by Sri Lankan governments, and this is Bhikkhuni Devasara, who left here in 429 CE, and this is the biographies of Buddhist nuns, translated from Chinese to by the Ronshi. And this in 429 CE, they arrived with the establishment of the proper Bhikkhuni lineage. But there were insufficient numbers to fulfill the ordination requirements. So she first went to Nanjing in China and investigated the situation, came back from China back to Sri Lanka, gathered the required number according to the Vinaya, went back again, and together with, and here is her voyage, and then with the bhikkhu there, I think was from India, Bhikkhu Sangava in India, and his monks, ordained the first Chinese bhikkhunis in China. This is a Sri Lankan woman Dhamma. This is what I call a shattering of the glass ceiling. This is our history. This is unparalleled. And so, the Buddha's vision for the humanity for the future. And this is also a remarkable statement where he talks about a united humankind. He likens this, and he takes this symbolism from the 5 rivers: the Ganges, the Yamuna, the Acharavati, Saradu, Mahi, which all flow into the Ganges. You need to check this out. You must check this out on Google to see whether the statement that was made by the Buddha is true, factual, or not. Please do so. But they say, but he says, these rivers, the 5, going to the Ganges and to the ocean, and then lose their names and their hands, and are simply the ocean. What an extraordinary symbolism for us to know. And so, the relevance of this extraordinary, parallel, relevant, topical teaching of our times for our situation now and what is to come of the future we have with the Dhamma. And what is the global vision of the Buddha? Bahujana Hikayat, for the welfare of many people, Bahujana Inspire, happiness of many people, and Yoga and Dhamma for the welfare and compassion of the world. Thank you so much for this extraordinary opportunity that you have given me to present about sustainability and the Dhamma. Thank you so much.